But on average, it's 1.1 times a day. And if we wanted 100 backups of each of those tweets, so that even if I'm not online, when he wants to find out what I said, he's able to quickly get that. That's 1.1 tweets a day times 100 is 110 backups, so our average user has to store about 110 tweets a day on their phone. The way that Holochain works is the storage of content is essentially random. It's based on the content itself. So that tweet is going to land with you and you and you and you, and this next tweet is going to land with him and her and him and her. Right? But that means that on average we'll have about 110 tweets a day on our phone. One tweet is 560 8-bit bytes. 560 bytes per tweet times 110 tweets a day times 365 days a year is about 22 megabytes. Right? 22, 23 megabytes a year. That's a little less than one photo. How many of you would be willing to have one photo worth of content be stored on your phone in order to use an application that works the way you want it to work? Yeah, screw my phone. Me being in charge of my own life matters more than that tiny bit of phone use. Now, this is a biased example. Twitter is small, right? That's a little tiny thing. YouTube videos would obviously require more storage space. But what that means is a year's worth of use costs you the same. Your phone is responsible for the same data as one photo. If we compare this with blockchain, the full participants, they call them full nodes, the full participants in an application have to store not random bits of content. They have to store every action that anyone has ever taken. Everything anyone has ever done. Does that sound efficient? No. How inefficient is it? Well, with that same app, that little peer-to-peer Twitter app, if we did that with a blockchain, and you wanted to be a full node, your phone would be responsible for the same data as 13 million photos for a year's worth of. How many of you are storing 13 million photos on your phone? Sometimes it feels like that, right? You may have hundreds or even a few thousand, but you don't have 13 million. Your phone can't handle that. In fact, nobody's phone can handle that. So this is the inefficiency of blockchain was partly why they needed to create incentive mechanisms. Since not every participant can bring the capacity to participate, they needed to incentivize, basically pay, certain folks who could bring that capacity. And this special class of folks, they call them miners, they can win rewards for helping the rest of the community do its work, but there's some problems there. So, because Holochain is efficient, outside incentives are not needed. Right? You don't need to pay people. Getting to use the app should be worth the small amount of work that your device has to do. In a Holochain application, we have a shared set of rules. So with Twitter, one of our rules may be 140 characters or less. If you try to send a video file, the rest of the members of the community are going to go, no, that's not the game we're playing, rejected. They're not going to store it, they're not going to serve it. They might let others know that you're behaving badly. With a Holochain application, an action will only propagate across the community if, one, it complies with the application rules, with that set of rules. Two, including membership requirements. Now, we could have an application where anybody can participate. We may have an application where you have to have gotten a key or a password from me. This is a private chat group. We're going to have just people in this room. I'm giving you each a key. If somebody tries to join that group who doesn't have that key, the rest of us are going to go, no. We don't have to do that in person. Our phone automatically rejects them. Right? They didn't have the key. If we want to, we could make it so that in order to participate in this community, you have to have established strong reputation first in some other community. Or you have to bring a passport or a driver's license or whatever the thing is that we feel we need in order to make this a safe space for us to take these kinds of risks with one another, for us to interact in these particular ways, whether that's the babysitting of children or the transferring of millions of dollars to strangers. If you put a whole bunch of money on the table and you say, hey, here's thousands of dollars, and if you behave badly in this community, you're going to give up those thousands of dollars. And then people are sending $5, $3, $5. Am I going to want to try to cheat somebody out of $5 if it's going to cost me thousands of dollars? Probably not. Right? In fact, this is kind of the core of security in general. There's no such thing as perfectly secure. But what there is the effort required, the cost to attack the system outweighs the benefit that you could gain from the system. If you can structure things like that, that it requires far more effort to attack than any benefit that you can gain, we can feel fairly confident that people aren't going to be attacking. This is how bank safes work. You can get through any bank safe. Right? You drill long enough, you're going to get through. The whole point with a bank safe is that it will take you so long that by the time you do get through, the police and other folks have been able to show up and restrain you. Holochain applications have a loosely coupled user interface. What that means is that the look and feel of the app are not tied to the back end tightly, meaning we are agreeing to use 140-character text messages in this Twitter application, but I can have it look however I want. On the back end, we are in agreement about how we're communicating with one another. But on the front end, I can make it purple if I want. Or I can hide videos, right? How many of you have used Facebook and all of a sudden a video is playing and you're like, and you're trying to make it stop and it won't stop. It's just breaking out into a small pop-up window. In today's applications, we as users have zero control, generally, over the look and feel of the app. Okay, that doesn't seem like too big a deal, right? Until you realize that what that means is that we can bridge between applications. We can combine applications into what feels and looks like, for us, a single space. We can customize things so that they work for us without having to also have everybody else use it exactly that same way. How many of you have used Uber? Are there local ride-sharing companies also?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Imagine an app where you hit a button and it sends out a rideshare request to both Uber and Ola.
Ola.
From your perspective, it seems like it's a single app. But on the back end, it's speaking to two different communities. And when you get here's one offer, they'll be there in 3 minutes, it's this price. Here's another offer, they'll be there in 2 minutes, it's this price. And you're actually a friend of this person. Here's their other reviews. And you get to go, that one. And the other one cancels. You don't accept that request. And this one books. And your ride comes and picks you up. But from your perspective, that could be 2 or 5 or 10 different communities that you are actually being able to make use of simultaneously. It shifts the nexus of power in the relationship between. So we'll try to get it to more interactive stuff quickly. Cypherpunks and sticks. So blockchain comes out of Bitcoin. Bitcoin comes out of the cypherpunk community. The cypherpunk community was this group of folks, geeky technologists, who were concerned with one main problem. I want to be able to interact with this guy without that guy whacking me with a stick. And usually that guy was played by the government, or in Spanish, el government. They were also worried that the government might actually be that guy, right? That they would be part of the community, and so they wanted to make it so that they were able to interact without having to know things about one another. They were focused on censorship resistance, is the way that they described it. But it was really about freedom from constraint by others, right? I want to be able to interact without somebody else preventing me from doing so. Their goal became digital anonymous cash, right? Digital anonymous cash. In order to solve that, they created something called global consensus. The community as a whole will keep track of some record book. In that record book, we will update it, but we'll update it as an entire community, step by step. So what they realized is that would be too difficult to do if every time somebody wanted to take an action, everybody else had to okay it. So they shifted to trying to doing this in chunks, what they call blocks, hence the term blockchain. So you try to send money to her, and he tries to send money to him, and they try to send, and I take those things together, and I process them as a single set of changes. And they came up with a mechanism that enabled someone to take that action, others to check and go, yeah, that looks right to me, and confirm, and the community, without voting or anything like that, to be able to go from, we were here, and now we're here.
Pretty much just like that.
To take a
clunky step.
Single step forward, the entire community moving together, one step. Right? That's interesting. That solved their problem of digital anonymous cash without knowing who that other participant is. They were able to agree that, hey, this money has been transferred, and he no longer has it available to transfer to someone else. What that meant was every full node keeps track of every action anyone has taken, as we described before, and this has some problems. One, scale. If the community is only able to go together one step at a time, it becomes very difficult for us to handle lots of things at the same time. We're not doing things in parallel. We're all having to move together. Imagine if we as a room were trying to do a treasure hunt, right? All of us were doing a treasure hunt. But in order for us to go look behind, that corner, we had to all go there together. And then look. No, in order to go somewhere else, we had to all go together. If we're all having moved together, we gain none of the benefits of us being able to explore separate possibilities simultaneously. Cost, really expensive, right? This, because everybody has to hold on to a copy of everything, that's incredibly energy intensive. And at this point, Bitcoin alone, just one of the cryptocurrencies, is using more electricity than, I think, the country of Australia. That's a little over 0.5% of the entire world's use of electricity for an application that is literally going, now you have money, right? That's crazy. Yeah?
First mean that we need also, we cannot mean, but as you told that we need a good architecture for it, right? So how can we provide a good architecture?
How can we provide a good architecture for being able to move in parallel? We'll dive into Holochain in just a second. Because I will get there, I think, in the slides. And if I don't, raise your hand again and go, hey, you didn't answer my question. Okay.
Can I re-emphasize the cost piece?
Sure.
I just want to mark that it's, so Bitcoin alone uses 1/200th of all of Earth's electricity that we produce currently to process less than 0.004% of all the money of payments that happen. So it's incredibly inefficient.
Speed, it's slow, right? It's ridiculously slow for these same reasons. So we've got to wait for the entire community to take a step. We're not able to do things together in parallel. Holochain had a different goal, and as a result, we created a different architecture. Instead of freedom from constraint by others, we were seeking freedom to constrain ourselves. We were wanting to make it so that we could choose to play some game together and enforce the rules of that game without needing an outside party to serve as referee, without needing some part of the community to be the referee. Because as soon as we make some part of the community the referee, we lose our ability to try new things and experiment and explore. The power starts to concentrate with whatever that subset of the community was. So we focused on freedom to constrain ourselves. Now this is a weird thing that has to do with agency. Agency isn't just, I'm choosing to do whatever. Sometimes in order to give myself the freedom to take an action, I may want to limit my freedom to take certain actions. So right now, Mumbai has pretty bad traffic, right? But it would be worse if we hadn't come to some sort of agreement about, generally you should drive on this side of the road. Like, even though that's not perfectly enforced, as a general rule, it helps things flow much quicker. But we've chosen to constrain our behavior. And that chosen constraint has given us freedom of mobility, somewhat. We choose to adhere to specific rules without needing any particular enforcement. So how does this look in the real world? Well, I'm just going to try to give a corollary of what this, with enforcement without a particular referee looks like. How many of you have ever played a card game? At home, with friends? How many of you hired a referee? What? How did it work? Well, you each remembered the rules of the game, sometimes not, and then somebody goes, hey, idiot, what are you doing? But you internalized the rules of the game that you were playing. And you each are acting as an enforcer. If somebody tries to do something that breaks those rules, that is invalid, like pick up a card when it's not their turn, the first party that notices can move to stop them. They're actually taking two actions. So how do we handle failures in a card game amongst friends? As soon as someone notices a problem, they, 1, notify others, and 2, move into action. Now often that happens in a single act. Bear, what are you doing, man? Put that card down. It's not your turn yet. When I do that, I didn't whisper it in his ear. I said it in a way where the other people at the table got notified. Hey, there's a problem here. And I was also letting Bear know I'm rejecting the action that you're trying to take. If he continues to try to pick up that card, what's going to happen? Yeah, the other people at the table are going to go, no, seriously, what are you doing? Right? And worst case scenario, they may kick him out of the game. Cards are a social game. The ability to continue playing is dependent on the other participants choosing to continue playing with you. All of the applications that we're describing here, these Holochain applications, are essentially social games with similar enforcement patterns. As soon as one party notices that you're trying to send video files in our Twitter app, they're going to go, no. 1, I'm rejecting that. I'm not going to store it. I'm not going to serve it. 2, I'm going to let other people know that you're not playing nice. And they may decide, like me, to refuse to accept things from you in the future. That may lead you to sort of get boxed out of the community, not by some vote, but by each participant going, yeah, says he's playing the same game. Turns out he's not. I'm not going to do that. We can think of this as an immune system response. It's actually how our bodies handle threats as well. In your body, there's no CEO cell, there's no single referee. A white blood cell shows up and it sees an infection, and it goes, ah! And it signals to others, there's a problem here, and then it moves to take action. Other white blood cells, they might start producing more, they might start moving in that direction. When they get there, they go, oh, there's an infection, and they signal to others and move to take action. And that keeps happening over and over. Each one showing up, responding to the situation as it sees it, taking the appropriate action. Notify others, move into action. Until white blood cells are showing up and they're going, where's the problem? Because it's gotten handled. And when they show up and there's no problem, do they signal to others? No. They just keep going about their business, and eventually the inflammation goes down as well. This is how distributed systems handle threats. It's how they maintain coherence. Okay, the phrase that we are using to describe this idea, that if I want to use an application and you want to use this application, we shouldn't need anybody else. We should be able to do that just because we are both wanting to dance this dance. Mutual sovereignty. For much of the 20th century, the debates in political theory centered on, is the individual more important or is the group more important? And we think that there's a way to kind of cut across this, where the group is really just the decisions of the individuals to participate in relationship in a particular way. And if at some point, for any of them, that stops working, they can go participate in other relationships, in other forms. They may lose access to the opportunities that were presented by that initial dance, because they're no longer part of it. That's okay. But they have the ability to go and try something else. So again, if you want to play this game, and I want to play this game, we shouldn't need anyone else involved. Arthur Brock is one of the co-founders of our project. This was a 10-year volunteer project that has, over the last couple of years, become much more embodied, I guess would be the way to frame it. We've moved from a 5-person volunteer team to over 50 people and thousands of community members. And our goal is essentially this: to empower communities of all shapes, flavors, and sizes to organize themselves and their flows of resources more effectively, with them being the censors for whether or not they're being effective. Quick question. Did I answer your question? Yeah. Well, can you reframe it to me?
So what kind of architecture can you use to
Technical architecture? So let me do 2 more slides. I think that's the end, and then I'll answer a little bit of what is the technical architecture of Holochain, because Holochain is really about solving that problem, and then leaving the flexibility for you to customize. Yes.
So you gave the example of the card game. Could you give us another example using that same concept but for a particular app?
For a particular app?
Any app.
Sure. Let's say we've got an application that has to do with sending money. And one of the criteria is you're not allowed to send money if you don't have any money in your account. Right? When you go to try to send money, but there is no money in your account, the participants that action lands with, they're going to check their own copy of the rules. Well, this actually gets us into the technical architecture. So I will answer that, and then in doing so, answer this. So in a Holochain app, there's basically 4 parts. The first one is shared rules. We've agreed to some shared set of rules. Each user has those rules on their device as part of this application. We call those rules the DNA. Similar to biology, this is the core rule set of that organism, that social organism, the game that these people are playing together. So shared rules. The second part, in the computer science world, there's something called public key cryptography, public and private keys. You actually rely on this all the time. Anytime you send a password or pay something with a credit card, you're relying on public key cryptography to encrypt and secure the communication. People are able to generate their own public and private keys. They don't have to get them from someone else. You actually manufacture them yourself, essentially. You share the public key, but you keep the private key private. And these things are matching in an interesting way. If I lock something up with a public key, it's like I lock a box with this one key. The only way to unlock that box is with the private key that matches it. And so if you have said, hey, if you want to send me stuff, use this public key to encrypt it. Okay, I can create a message, lock it up. Other people can see that message, but it's in a gobbledygook form. It's not meaningful to them. They don't speak the grammar. But when it lands with you, you have the key that can unlock that box, unscramble that message, and make it meaningful. That makes it so that we're able to do essentially private communication. But the flip side of this is that you're able to sign statements with your private key. You can sort of encrypt things that others can confirm by checking the public key and see, yep, this message emanated from that party. That's a signing thing. So, long story short, we have shared rules, we have keys. The keys are sort of a tool for bootstrapping identity. Identity has correlations, that I know that it was you who took this action, and then also you who took the next action, and then also you who took the next action, not somebody else trying to impersonate you. The third part, local storage. We are not storing everything that anybody has ever done, but we are storing our own memories. So when I tweet, the first thing that I do, I hit send, it checks my own rules. Is it less than 140 characters? Yep, looks good. And then it signs it and adds it onto my own device, storing it in a particular data structure known as a tamper-resistant log. It's a hash chain, technical term for those who aren't familiar. What that particular way of storing information does is later, if I've been sharing content out, later if I go and try to pretend that I didn't do this thing, or I try to change history somewhat, it makes visible to others that I have gone and fraudulently edited the record. This is one of the core things that blockchain is relying on as well. It's the chain part of the blockchain. Without going into too much detail there, making a change from 3 weeks ago would actually alter content moving forward, and other people would look at that and go, hey, this is all changed, and they would literally be able to see where the change had occurred. So that's a fraud prevention mechanism. The fourth part is shared storage. In Holochain, we're using something called a distributed hash table. How many of you have used BitTorrent or other peer-to-peer file sharing systems? BitTorrent uses a distributed hash table. Similar thing. Well, how does it work? The basic gist is the problem they were trying to solve was if I want to put a file into a system, but that system has computers that are jumping onto a network and dropping off of the network, how do I put it in and then later be able to get it back out? Even if everybody I had originally handed it to has since gone offline. And the answer that they came up with was, where we will store the content will be based on the content itself. So when I tweet, we're able to use something called a hash function. This is cryptography, math and stuff. But it basically spits out a little tiny file, a little sort of name that we call a hash or a digital fingerprint. Where that content lives is based on that hash. I don't need to get into the deep weeds on this, but each of you ends up having essentially an address that is the hash of your public key. When I tweet, it's going to be 76 blah blah blah, and that 76 blah 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 is going to go land with the devices on the network that are close to 76 blah blah blah. If you're a 1, 2, yada yada, I go, hey, you know anybody closer to 76 blah 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 than you? And you go, yeah, I know a 3. Hey 3, you know anybody closer? Yeah, I know a 7. Okay, 7, you know, yeah, I know a 7, 6. And eventually we get to the closest parties in the network to that piece of content. As people drop off the network, the folks around them, who are close to them in this 7, 6, blah, blah, blah space, are checking in on occasion. They're going, hey, you got anything new? Got anything new? Got any signatures? Anything saying, yep, this content looks good? And if I go, hey, you got anything new? And I don't hear back, hello? Shoot, we lost someone. And then I will go to recruit a new party who is near, not near in geographical space, but near in this address space, to hold on to another backup. Making it so that it's a self-healing network. Even if lots of folks have dropped offline, if they didn't all, as long as they didn't all drop offline at once, we were making new backups as the old ones were going offline. The other piece that we've added is something called validation, where when I take this tweet, I don't just sign it, and I don't just add it to my own log, and I don't just share it into the network, but when I share it into that network and it lands with you as one of the parties who's supposed to hold on to it, you don't go, okay, here you go, I'll hold it. No, you also check your own copy of the rules. You maybe reach out for other information from the rest of the community that you might need to validate this follows the rules. So yes, he was trying to spend some money, and you check with other folks, did he have any money in his account? You get back, yes, there is money in the account. Okay, it looks good to me. You then accept that. You sign, looks good to me, with your little private key. And when other people ask for that content, you hand them not only the content, but your vouching that this played by the rules, as well as anybody else's signatures who had similarly claimed that it played by the rules. Again, if somebody misbehaves, you try to spend money that's not in your account. When that lands with him or with somebody else, they're going to check their rules, and the first party who goes, "Ooh, this doesn't fly," will issue what we call a warrant, and they'll start alerting other parties that you're cheating. But they don't just have to take my word for it. They can check it themselves. They've got their own copy of the rules. They're able to check that you had signed this action. They're able to check that, it violates the rules. And then they're going to go, nope, I'm going to turn away from you. I'm going to add you to my block list. So I'm not willing to receive stuff from you. I'm not willing to send stuff to you, etc. So this is for those who are non-technical, I apologize that this was a little deep. For those who are technical, I hope this was somewhat helpful. I'm going to go here and then there. Yes?
So I know it's too early to ask this, but what exactly the revenue model is built? How is the revenue model of this blockchain?
So the question was, how is the revenue model? What's the revenue model for Holochain? There isn't one. With Holochain, this is a free open source project that we're giving away to the world because we think that that's the only way it can actually become what it needs to become. So this came out of a 10-year volunteer project. I actually lived in my car for a year and a half in order to work on this. Now I had an apartment. I even had a housekeeper. But in order to not have to go do other work so that I could just work on this, I needed to rent not just the guest room and not just the futon in the living room, but my room. So that's where this is coming from intention-wise. For us, the goal here is to fundamentally change how humans can coordinate. We think that can shift economic systems. We think that can shift governmental systems by giving us a new medium of communication and coordination. But we did set up a business. So Holochain has no business model. Holo, confusingly named, is a Holochain app. What does it do? Well, with a Holochain app, you actually have to be running the application to participate in the app, right? You have to be a peer. Not everybody on day one is going to be an early geeky Holochain tech adopter. But if we build some ride-sharing app, we want anyone to be able to book a ride. Holo is a peer-to-peer web hosting application. It's a web hosting marketplace that enables the members of your community to say, you know what? Yes, I'm running the app, but I'm also willing to have more of the storage and processing power on my computer used to serve websites to ordinary folks, people who aren't participating in this application. Anybody with a web browser, as a result, can interact with that Holochain app and can book a ride. Now, what happens when I make use of my laptop for serving that website to others is that the developer pays me for doing that web hosting, just like today, the developer pays Amazon Web Services for doing their web hosting. But the difference is, instead of paying a single company, you're paying the members of your community. Our business model is that we have a 1% or less transaction fee when payments are made for this in this system. We invented a new form of currency, basically a new crypto accounting system based on mutual credit accounting, and that system enables us to do the millions of simultaneous transactions needed, and it's efficient enough to handle the tiny volumes. You know, if I'm paying somebody 3 cents, the accounting cost needs to be far less than that in order for it to make sense. Yes?
So, different question. So there has been 5 million searches of videos every day.
There's been
5 million searches for videos every day. There are different types of apps that are coming. They're generating video content.
yes.
So how we can use that video content to generate market? So to help ourselves to use that content to to get to our customers?
I don't know. I'm not sure off the top of my head. How to use today's existing video content to get to customers? Not sure. For us, we're focusing on how do we enable those participants, we don't think of them as customers, to solve the problems that they're wanting to solve. It sounds to me like and I recognize some of this, part of this class is data science oriented, right? Which, just to be totally clear, at one level, data science is about being able to inquire and surveil large amounts of information. We currently live in a world where information is pooling in particular organizations. That is an amazing bonanza in terms of data and what kinds of insights you can extract from it. But I'm not certain how long that will continue, because that pooling is a giant concentration of power. You have a comment?
Yeah, I wanted to add something to the step before. When Matt's talking about the choosing, I'm going to look at what you said and I'm going to see whether that's real and I'm going to verify it. And if you're trying to cheat in a game that we're playing, I'm going to say no to that. And that the system facilitates that. I just want to make it really clear that that's something that you as a user don't actually have to pay any attention to. That's all happening. Your phone does all of that automatically. You don't. It doesn't say, "Hey, someone's trying to cheat you." It's just like that. It just works that way.
That's happening on the back.
So it's a subconscious layer.
So how will users potentially participate in the Holochain? Because you said that somebody with a web browser can also be in it.
It's a very different thing. And so as a result, that community has an inability to improve how useful it is for them. Uber, because they're a business, they're trying to create sort of a one-size-fits-all experience. There are some dynamics involved there for them to make all of you behave in exactly the same way. Are we all the same? Do we have the same needs? No, but the nature of that architecture puts pressure for us to all be treated as if we were the same. There's no dignity in that system. This ability to customize the look and feel of an app means that you can combine different applications together, or you can bridge between them. Maybe I've been driving in Uber, and I've built up some solid reputation. People have said nice things about me. Now, just to be clear, I don't think Uber is migrating to Holochain anytime soon, right? Another organization, a local cooperative, a ride-sharing community, yeah, there are some of those that are trying to build on top of Holochain right now. But if I build some reputation inside of one of these communities, people have said nice things about me. They say I'm speedy and my car is nice and I'm friendly and not creepy. What?
Smell good.
Smell good. And I want to start driving for this other community. One of the things I can do is I can take the nice things people have said about me and share them into that other community. And so even though I have not yet established reputation there, if those people value information coming out of this other community, they may be able to decide, yeah, I'll ride with him instead of someone else. And I'm suddenly able to open up new relationships. Yeah, because I was able to bridge between these two, what would previously have been separate silos.
Everyone got that? Yeah. Did you get that? That's super cool.
So we just covered this. Reputation that I've gained in a rideshare app can be shared into a new rideshare community. Today, the internet puts applications at the center. How many of you feel pulled in 40 different directions each day by your phones? Like ping, ping, ping. I do. Why? Because I have to go to Facebook, and then I come back out, and I go to Uber, and I come back out, and I go to there. And these are separate social spaces that we're needing to run to and then come back out. It's not just that, it's that each of these social spaces, because they have to have a business model to run, they're incentivized to try to addict us and distract us. So the way that their business model and their application evolves is focused on doing everything they can to get me to spend as much of my precious time in their app, regardless of whether that's useful for me. This is a predatory relationship. You are the prey. I am the prey. It's not that they're evil. If they don't do that, somebody else is going to, and they're going to go away. It's just the nature of the system. But it doesn't have to be like that. Today, the internet puts applications at the center, and we run to those applications. With Holochain, we're trying to turn the internet inside out by putting humans at the center. We're trying to make it so that you are the center of these flows of information and coordination. And that you can make those work better for you. That if you want to try, Twitter purple, you can. If you and even just one other person want to try speaking in a new way, you want to try doing not rideshare requests, but babysitting offers, you can. Nobody else needs to okay it. Nobody else needs to have a business model that supports it. If you have a phone and they have a computer, hey, cool, you can do this. I'm going to take a quick pause, a breath. How are we doing so far?
Good.
Okay. Stand up. We'll just get some energy, because I know listening to all this stuff is a lot. We'll have more to go through, and then we'll get into some more interactive stuff. Oh!
So my question is, today we are saying that there is lots of shift in our economies and there is lot of consumption patterns. So now you have developed such a technology, I call it technology or some like that you're providing a platform to each and everyone so that everything will be followed ethically and everything. But don't you think so? 15 years back, we were having a different consumption pattern, and now we're having a different consumption pattern. So this thing, consumption pattern, the content consumption. So in coming future, don't you think that companies or different organizations will monetize this thing?
Because yeah, I mean, you can still, there's still ways of monetizing it. You're just going to have to monetize it differently. And as when you said ethical, that it was for ethical. We're hoping people use it ethically, but you can take a car and you can drive it into a group of people. It's a tool. It's inert. You can use it unethically. And it's designed to be used ethically, and it has a lot of potential to foster relationships in ways that are, we think, better for people and for culture. But it's not. I mean, it's neutral because it's just a tool.
Other questions?
So I just want to know, in your opinion, do you think the world is ready for this? Because with this new technology, the first thing that comes to people's mind is fear and advocacy for our history. So, is that something you consider a threat or what was your?
People's fear of the new technology?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we don't see it as a threat, because if you make something that's really useful for people, and that's practical, and that people use them, so you're always going to have a series of people on how they adopt it. But part of what we're doing is making it so that it actually seamlessly integrates in the way that people are already used to it. So grandma can go online and she can use a web app through a website on her favorite browser, and she does, and it's a similar experience to what she's already used to. She doesn't need to know that this is what's running in the back end.
Touching on a different point, I think related to where you were getting at. Will governments be threatened? Will large organizations feel threatened by this? And we're working very diligently to make it so that they see it as an opportunity, not a threat. So that they go, oh man, we don't want to be the last to get on board here. Right? And partly why Holochain wasn't focused on freedom from constraint by others, right? We weren't trying to evade authority. That wasn't our focus. That actually helps us significantly, because by making it so that it's really about people choosing to interact in ways that work for them, that's a very different thing that doesn't lend itself so easily to the nefarious and threatening forms that blockchain basically initially was proposing and getting adopted for.
And so it's less about I don't need to know you, you don't need to know me, so we can have this interaction, we can go our separate ways and never need to know each other ever again, and we're totally safe, right? Because
That's blockchain.
That's blockchain. But what we're talking about is I want to be able to say, like, can I trust you? And look back and see your history, and you look at me and see, can I trust you? And
Or
back
not
and see
just
my
look back and
history.
see my history, but I'm willing to go, I want to interact with you. Let me pull in some of my history.
Yeah. And then they could say, oh, this person, I vouched for this person, that we're actually connected to a network of people the same way we are in reality. So it works more like actual social interactions, which is also then shouldn't be, terrifying to a government or
The last piece I'll say here is, Holochain actually looks really familiar when you think about small group social dynamics. As humans, we have all sorts of different ways of working together and structuring our relationships in small communities. We have very few patterns for how to structure our relationships in big communities. Those few patterns generally tend to be very hierarchical. It's one of the only things that has worked at scale. We're saying, there may be something different possible with technology like this. We may be able to actually do much richer and more complex patterns of coordination at larger scales than is previously possible. And we believe that the parties, whether that's companies or governments or little communities, that begin adopting this stuff early will gain big advantages in terms of their collaborative capacity. And that's what will drive the adoption.
Is there another question over there? Did you have one?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll just discuss with you later.
Oh, okay.